Hello, everybody. Welcome to the listing paperwork course. I'm going to go over the basic forms that we would use on a regular basis. And feel free to interject and ask questions along the way. Raise your hand would be preferred so I can call on you because I can't necessarily see you face to face since I am in a
I got a case
Zoom room.
a while ago.
Okay. We are going to start with our number one form that's the most important. There are two listing forms. There's a 1A, exclusive right to sell, and there is a 1B. 1A is friendly for us. 1B states that if the seller finds a buyer, you will not get paid. So never use 1B. We're going to always use 1A as it's a safety net for all of us. So as we go through the form, it's going to have information. You're going to put in the seller information, whether there's one or two. If there's more than one, we are going to talk about that. So stay tuned. Here, you're going to put the listing firm. Now, you could be in any one of my three firms. So you're going to put the firm that you're in. It's either going to be Keller Williams East Side, Keller Williams North Seattle, Keller Williams Seattle. You're then going to put the address of the property, the city that it's in, the county, and the zip code. Okay. People are still coming in. Sorry. Then you're going to remind them that they are agreeing for us to list this into the Northwest MLS, which means that it will also get broadcasted out based on IDX feeds to multiple other real estate sites, whether it's another real estate company, Zillow, homes.com, and so forth. From there, we have to put that the seller grants us the right to list the property exclusively, nobody else, just us, our firm, and that it will run until the midnight of X. So this is your end date. So if you're going to list it for 3 months, then you go 3 months down the road or 6 months, a year, whatever you agree upon. Because we are required by the state of Washington to provide the real estate pamphlet, agency pamphlet, those are in our disclosure packet. So if you're having a 1A sign, you have to have the disclosure packet sign at the same time or prior to, because it says that the seller acknowledges receipt of the pamphlet, and they have no idea what that is. Many people sign these simply having no idea what they're signing. So make sure that you are going through this form with your client line by line. Then I, the listing firm, am going to appoint you to represent the firm as the listing broker. So it creates an agency relationship between the two of us as well as the actual seller. So even if you are selling your own home, you are still required to use a listing agreement because you can't do FSBO based on the Northwest MLS rules. And so you still have to have an agreement with the firm. So anytime that you're going to list your own property, I still have to have a 1A in our file. Dual agency or limited dual agency. That means, are you going to represent both sides? It is a risky practice. And if you are a principal of the contract, meaning you're one of the sellers, you cannot be a dual agent. So you can't sign that because we don't have errors and admissions insurance. The other side has to be represented so that we don't get sued of something going wrong. But then your client would sign this saying that they automatically allow you to represent the other side. If the buyer doesn't want to be in a limited dual agency situation, you're going to need to cancel one of the contracts, probably the buyer agreement, and then refer them off to another buyer broker so that they can be represented by another party. I am automatically a dual agent if either one of you in the same office represent one party. So in Kirkland, if two of you are representing the buyer and the seller, I'm automatically a dual agent. If one of you is in North Seattle, one of you is in Kirkland, technically I'm not a dual agent because it's different firms. However, I will be construed as a dual agent because I will have access to both files. So the other thing you need to remember about all of our paperwork, as well as all the boilerplate, you can never strike through it. I've had people try to strike through limited dual agent. It simply doesn't exist if they don't sign this line. So never strike through any of this. And if you strike through this, then two of you can't do a transaction together. Okay. So we never strike through anything. We shall submit the listing, including property information and the listing input sheet, to the Northwest MLS on the list date. You are allowed to have a 90-day window. Okay. And that's it. So let's see, what are we in? April, May, June, July 8th. If you want to try to list this on July 15th, you can't do that. So it has to be a 90-day window or less. If you put the 90-day in here and you still need more time, you can still do an extension of the listing. And I'll show you what that form looks like as well. Seller acknowledges that we have state laws, local, federal, fair housing rules. Anytime that your seller wants to embark in conversations that will violate fair housing, you need to shut them down because you too could go to federal prison with them if this ever came down to such a situation. So make sure that you're not engaging in any of those rule violations. The good stuff, compensation. Seller acknowledges that there's no standards of commissions or compensation. Okay, so this is the amount that you charge. I give you the opportunity to charge something. If you think you can charge zero, that's wrong. So again, anytime you want to go below 1%, you need to call me and ask me some questions and we'll move forward from there. But this is what the listing firm will get. Okay. So because I'm the designated broker of all three offices, I can actually set a standard for the firm itself, which I have not. But let's just say that we've agreed to 3%. You can do 3% or you can do a flat fee amount. Other does not mean you can have a variable. Other means if it's vacant land or a condominium or a single family, maybe single family, you charge 3%. Condominium, you charge 3.5%, 2.5%, whatever the situation is. That's the only way you can have a variable. You can't say, I charge 3%, but if the seller's only paying 2%, then that's all I'm going to take. That is not allowed. That is 100% against the law based on how the law is written today. So making sure that you don't ever do that. Question, do those rules apply to the 1% listing agencies that advertise that? Isn't that a set fee? Somebody that advertises a commission amount is something that their firm has okay. It's not setting a standard for the industry, it's setting a standard for that particular agent or that particular firm. And we cannot ever advertise that we do listings for anything at all. So we're not going to advertise, we do it for 2%, 1%, 2.5%. You never advertise what you charge as a listing broker. It's the firm policy prohibits you from advertising that particular way. So what if the buyer is unrepresented by a firm? Well, that means that you can either do a percentage of higher, don't go lower, or you'll get paid lower if you double end the deal, or if the buyer's not represented, or a flat fee again. So do you charge more if you're having to represent the seller, buyer's unrepresented, and you have to do all of the work? Now, I do want you to remember anytime there's a buyer on the other side that's not represented, they're either represented by you as a dual agent or they're unrepresented. How are you going to get through the inspection? Because the minute you go on that inspection with them, you now have the information. And because you have the information from that inspection, you have to now legally give it to your seller. But now, because you have to legally do that, you've now waived the buyer's inspection contingency. Okay. So make sure that you have a system or a policy on how you would handle that. Buyer broker firm compensation. This is where you have the conversation with the seller. Seller, what amount do you want to offer to a buyer brokerage so the buyer doesn't have to pay their broker? It will attract more buyers if the buyer doesn't have to come out of pocket with an amount. So are you going to offer compensation that's going to be posted in the Northwest MLS is box number 1. Or do you want the buyer to say, hey, seller, how much are you going to pay my agent so I don't have to in the offer? Or I'm not going to offer any compensation. Either of these two will show up as a blank on the purchase and sale agreement, which will be line 17A or 19A, depending on the purchase and sale agreement. A lot of sellers will say, well, what do you recommend? And again, you tell them that there is no set fee. It's what you want to pay. What I can tell you is your neighbors, if we pull up the listings in your neighborhood and look at that together, you can see what the other sellers in the neighborhood are offering to pay a buyer brokerage. And that's usually the easiest way to do it than say, well, you should do this or you should do that. They need to come up with an amount that they're comfortable with. What if the listing expires? Once it expires, you have 180 days that if a buyer comes along and wants to buy the property, you will get paid based on this amount here. Okay. If they list with another brokerage for the same amount, in case 3%, then this, what we call tail provision, is off the table and you will not get paid. Once it gets listed with another brokerage, one, you're gonna have to find out how much they're charging. If it's different, you get the difference. The seller would have to pay you. Again, you would have to go after them in court to get them to pay you. 2, you'd have to get somebody to tell you what they're charging because they don't have to tell you. So this particular paragraph is only good if the person is not relisting with another brokerage. Cancellation without cause. The seller can cancel this agreement without legal cause. Seller may be liable for damages incurred by the firm or such cancellations and may then still owe compensation to the firm. The firm will not personally go after them. If they want to cancel, you and I will, of course, have many conversations to figure out what we can do for it not to be canceled. One moment. Additional consent. Seller consents to the firm receiving compensation from more than one party. So again, in a limited dual agent situation, it could be that you might be getting paid by the buyer and from the seller, which is completely legal. The state now requires that we disclose if we are going to be obligated to pay a referral fee to another firm. If the two parties are in the same firm, then we do not need to worry about a referral agreement because the firm already owns the contract, both contracts. If there's a buyer agreement, seller agreement, if there's an internal referral in the system, you will not need to do a referral form unless you are getting more money. You will need to disclose to your seller that, yes, I have referred the buyer that you don't want me to represent and you don't want them to be unrepresented to Joe Broker in my office, and they are going to pay me a referral fee of 25% or whatever the situation is. You will then need to disclose that. But usually if there's other reasons in there and you're not part of the same transaction, then you won't need to have you won't have to have a referral agreement signed within the office. The seller is consenting for you to put a lockbox on the property. You will want to have conversations with your client that it's a protected box. There have been known times where people have broken into them. We've had people break into them and rob a house. It does happen. Very rarely, but it does happen. But you'll want to make sure that they understand there will be a lockbox and that the reason we're attaching it to the house, whether it's a gas meter, a front door, and maybe we attach it to a gas meter because the front door has more of a handle versus a knob and you can't secure it. Maybe you have a spindled front porch and you can hang it on that. Maybe you bring in a chain link lock and you lock it up and somewhere else in the front yard or whatnot, but make sure that it is secure versus the seller wanting to bring it inside every night. Because there have been many times where they forgot to put it out the next morning or someone steals it off the front porch. So making sure that it's secure on the property. What happens if your seller consents to a non-Northwest MLS broker gaining access and selling the property? Is the seller going to authorize or not authorize that practice? How are they going to be able to show that home? Because our Supra app works only for our lockboxes that are in our MLS system. So Northwest MLS systems versus Yakima's MLS will have different Supra access. They can't access our Supra boxes if they're in a different MLS system. So make sure you have a policy or procedure on what that looks like. I would recommend that either you go on the showing. I don't recommend you leave a key at the office or a contractor box because you have no idea the person calling you if they're actually a licensed broker in the state of Washington, because you won't be able to check their status necessarily in our Northwest MLS if they're licensed in Yakima, Vancouver, and so forth, Spokane. So what is your policy for that? The seller authorizes the firm and the MLS to publish and distribute it out, like I said, to Zillow's, other real estate companies, homes.com, and the like. So making sure that they also know that it will go out, the appraisers will have access to the Northwest MLS for information they might need, and that we will give sales information to the MLS upon closing so that people have that for use of market analysis for another property, appraisals for other properties, and such. Neither the firm, the MLS, or the members of the MLS provide or be responsible for any information. We hold them harmless. So the property conditions insurance, this is when you tell your clients to call their insurance company and let their insurance put them on notice that they are listing the property and they may have to get different coverage. So make sure that they've gone through that step. Seller warrants that they have the right to sell the property and that it will not be a distress conveyance, meaning short sale, auction, foreclosure, any of those types of situations that do come up. If it has to change to a distress situation, there might be additional paperwork that you might need. There might be a way that you might need to market the property differently. There might be a time period where you would take it off the market in order to get some of their other affairs in order. Seller will question? What kind of coverage is needed? That will depend on the insurance company. So that's why they have to call their insurance company to determine if they need additional coverage or not based on it being live on the market. The seller is or is not exempt. So Form 17, the seller disclosure statement must be completed, or if it's vacant land, 17C, or there's a 17 for commercial. Those are the only three options. The only exemptions from having to fill one out: bankruptcy trustee. No other trustee is exempt from filling this out, just a bankruptcy trustee. It is subject to a public offering statement. New construction condominium is what that is used for. Or they are truly an estate sale. So if it's a living trust, any other kind of trust, a personal representative, depending on the situation, we would want to talk to title to see if they're exempt, if it is an estate sale, but it's listed differently. But those really are the only three exemptions. Seller shall furnish and pay for the buyer's title policy. The buyer will pay for the lender's policy. Pay the real estate excise tax, half of the escrow fees. So there are fees incurred. And what I do recommend is you utilize one of the financial tools in either the MLS or another app where you can give them a net proceeds. And I recommend a net proceeds based on staggered pricing, maybe $50,000 apart, kind of a thing, $100,000 apart. If they're wanting to be overpriced, maybe you do 100,000, 200,000, but net proceeds in a number of pricing would be a good idea to show them what their costs are going to be. And that they will fill out or an equivalent of 22E, the FIRPTA, which is the Foreign Investment Real Estate Property Tax Act. If for some reason the seller gets to keep the earnest money because the buyer has breached, does the seller get all of it, or is it going to split half between you and half between them? I do recommend splitting half equally because you're going to incur costs, and they may decide after the buyer breaches they don't want to sell the property, and now you're out all of your costs. So think about that before you simply check retained by seller. If for some reason they need an attorney and you need an attorney or we need an attorney, that either party will, the prevailing party will get their attorney fees paid for. Any questions on 1A listing agreement? Great. Okay.
Yeah, Janine, this is Michael Kane. Quick question
Michael.
for you.
Yep.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not sure if my reception's good. If the seller were to cancel, can you delineate in on 18 where it says other, saying that the seller will pay the listing agent for staging and for photography? Can you actually
You're going
they'll
to put
pay
that
for
in
it if
your
they were?
You're going to put that in your listing agreement. If for some reason the seller cancels prior to the expiration date and then put, you're responsible to pay for X, Y, and Z, or you may want to reframe the wording and say seller to pay for X, Y, and Z, invoices included. Upon closing of the property, listing broker will reimburse seller these costs. So you have two options. I think I lost him. Okay, if he comes back, we'll address it. Listing input. Notice that there's dots next to each of these. You're going to need to fill those out in order for it to be part of and being able to push it through from incomplete to an active listing. I don't recommend you ever use express forms, which I'm using today. I use them simply for teaching. Always use transaction desk because it auto-populates enough information. When you're filling out the listing input sheet in the Northwest MLS transaction desk, there's an icon at the top that says upload. It automatically puts it up, the listing. So you fill this out once and your client hasn't signed it yet. So make sure that it is complete and you've sent it off for signing, or wait to complete it, make sure it's done, get it signed, and then go back into forms, not documents. Hit the upload to the system. It will populate in Matrix as an incomplete listing for you to add your supplements, your photos, anything else that you need to add in there. It is the easiest way to do it, so you don't have to fill this out, get it signed, and then input it into the Matrix system. So I always recommend you start at the top and you just start tabbing through each of these. But anything that has a dot has to be completed. I don't ever want to see a blank listing price, listing date, expiration date in command. I want this completed so that I know your client has agreed to these items, especially this one. I do not like to see blank listing prices. You will definitely get it pushed back. You will now need to use a Form 18, which we'll talk about, to now tell us how much you're going to list the property for, unless you want to fill this out. So download it, fill this out, have your client initial and date it, and re-upload it. Make sure that this is done before the list date. That is a requirement. You'll notice that FERPTA is not a required field. I highly recommend you fill it in just so people know, unless, of course, you already have a 22E uploaded into the supplements area in Matrix. If for some reason your client doesn't want internet advertising, meaning they don't want it on Zillow, they don't want it on homes.com, they don't want it in other real estate IDX feeds, you're going to change this to no. Don't recommend that because the whole point of them listing with us is so that they get as much exposure as possible. Year built, effective year built source, making sure that if for some reason they took it all the way down to studs, you've got this date and you've got the source where that comes from. Square footage source. I get this question a lot. They say it's 1,500 square feet. MLS says it's 1,400 square feet. Well, you are going to put your source for square footage, okay, here. So I would put seller. Hopefully they have some sort of documentation that says they have 100 square feet more. I highly recommend you go down versus trying to go up because during the verification of information time period for the purchase and sale agreement, that is something for the buyer to verify. And if they find out there's a discrepancy, they didn't find that out before they made an offer, they have a right to get out of the property if they haven't waived that particular paragraph. So I would always, less is always more in this situation. You can have additional co-broker in here with you. It could be with our firm. It could be with a different firm. Notice that it's got ID numbers. It's completely fine. It's completely legal. Remember, if you're going to co-list anything or co-broker or even on the buyer side, both firms have to have complete files. So if you're the co-broker and not the listing broker, we're still going to need our disclosure packet. And we have the most robust disclosure packet, I think, versus most firms out there. So you might want to convince the listing broker to have ours signed versus theirs. They may not even require anything, but we will. We want to make sure they've gotten their agency pamphlet, that they know the risks of mold in the house and what it can do, lead-based paint, and so forth. Would this be needed twice if a listing agent decided to double list the property? No, you mean the disclosure packet? No, the disclosure packet just needs to be done once. And if you're going to double list a property, you're going to list it how it currently is. If it's a condominium, you're going to list it as a condominium. You're then going to use Form 124 for the double listing, pay $50 to the MLS, send them the listing input for single family, doesn't have to be signed by anybody. Send both those forms to listing input at nwmls.com. They will double list it for you. I highly recommend in agent remarks, you put the purchase and sale agreement that is needed. I will tell you many times I've had people come to me, the lender says we have to change from single family to condominium purchase and sale agreement because it's a condominium. The easiest way to know if it's a condominium versus single family is look at the legal description. The word condominium will tell you everything right up front. If there's a lot and a block, that'll tell you that's single family. Always look at the legal description before you write on a property to make sure you use the correct one because they have different things that can happen throughout the actual process of it closing. So anything that has a dot, again, you have to fill out. When you fill out showing instructions, you don't have to double list it. There are some townhomes or condominiums that are structured as a townhome that are detached from the other units and they look like single family. It's an advantage to double list it because you're going to capture single family viewers and you're going to capture condominium viewers. So you don't have to double list anything. And you can't double list a condominium that is truly just a condominium in a giant building as a single family. It has to have something that makes it seem like it's also a single family. Another one would be, does it straddle an area or could it be closer to one area? Will the MLS let you double list it in area 140 and 700, which is not possible because one is West Seattle or Mercer Island, and the other one is Queen Anne. So, but what?
130 is one that 140 and 130.
130. So they're very close to each other, Northwest MLS. You may want to double list it if the MLS will let you. You don't pay $50 if they don't let you double list it though. Double listing is not required. When you're doing the showing information, I usually use appointment because I want them, even if it's vacant. And I actually also will tell you, never put in the listing that it's a vacant home because some things can happen. One, you have an open house, you've got a scammer who maybe they found a agent detail page that fell out of my car and it says it's a vacant home. One, they might back a U-Haul truck up to it and destage it for you. And the neighbors are like, what's going on? Did the property sell? Oh yeah, we're just destaging. That's an actual story where a scammer has come and emptied out a home. Two, if they are coming to your open house and they're like, oh, let's see if these are soft close. And they open the drawer and they close it, but they see all the keys, remote controls. So again, as a listing agent, remove all of that, put it in a baggie, put it in a safe place, the trunk of your car, your office, but get it out of the house so nobody can find those. But they might do that when they're being shown it as well. Maybe they said, oh, let's see how many vacant homes we can see today and how many we can see if we can access later and steal everything. So be very cautious there. That's again why they want to talk to their insurance company, because that can be costly for you and them. So I always do by appointment. MLS key box. If you're not going to have an MLS key box, you have to tell the MLS why. And I highly recommend using showing time. It is the easiest way to do it. I do recommend it goes to you versus the client, because that way you can control things a little bit as well. As an example, my parents who are a little bit older, their house is listed. I get all the showing time requests. It gives me an opportunity to call my mom or my dad and say, hey, does this work for you? And they can tell me yes or no. Otherwise, my mom would probably just send everybody through. So, and they need an hour in their situation because they've got a grandbaby that's living there right now. So those are the three that I do recommend. If for some reason you can't get the lockbox put on in time, go into showing time, block out however long you need to drive from here to the house, wherever here is, and put that lockbox on, because the lockbox, based on the Northwest MLS rules, cannot be attached until the listing is live. Okay. Senior exemption will be a tax thing, and that will be in the tax records. So making sure that you're just going through, and if you don't know the answers to a lot of these, go to your seller, have a printout, and just do some scribbling so that you can fill out, or when you're walking the property, have a clipboard. I usually take an iPad, I hotspot onto my phone, and I just fill it out while I'm at the house in transaction desk. It's the easiest way to do it. School districts, unless you're really confident or they're really confident that that's not going to change, I put, of course, the district, that's a requirement, but it is not a requirement, but that you put the elementary, the middle school, or the high school in the system. I always put buyer to verify. Some parents are very particular on the school in the district, and they want to make sure, I want to make sure they get what they want. My son would have gone to 3 different high schools based on how everything changed when he was younger. So I don't like to put this information in personally, but again, it's a personal preference. Phone to show can be your telephone number, but you cannot put an owner phone number. Look at it, it's not a dotted item anymore. So you don't have to put the seller's phone number in the system. Phone to show is absolutely whatever phone number you want in there. And then, of course, put where they are. Again, I don't put the vacant part. So that's, again, I think just a pure safety net for any of us. And so you go through and you're tabbing through and you're getting all of the information there. Be very careful about these 2 sections. A lot of times we get a lot of this filled out and it's not actually true, and they will require different forms. You'll need certificates for a built green, for accessory dwelling units. Again, they'll want additional information and attachments. So be careful if you're trying to figure out if you can do this. It'll be based on what the MLS will probably be able to tell you. When you get down to the bedrooms, this area, number of bedrooms, how many bedrooms are there? Well, and notice they finally put it in here, excludes the primary bedroom. So if you have 4 bedrooms and they're all on the upper level, let's say there's only one upper level, you're going to have a 3 here and a primary bedroom of upper, okay? Or if there's multiple, wherever that primary bedroom is, but it only counts the bedroom. It does not count the bathroom, which I think is really weird, because why would it be a primary bedroom if it doesn't have a bathroom? So bathroom count will need to be specific to however many bathrooms are in there. And you do add them up. So a full bath is going to be toilet, bathtub with a shower, and a sink. 3/4 bath is going to be shower, toilet, sink. Half bath, sink, toilet. You add those all together to get your amounts. But first, you're just going to put the amount of where each one is, and then number of showers, number of bathtubs. And then it will populate onto other sites as they are this many together, 5, whatever the situation is. Marketing remarks. I recommend you fill this in before your client signs this, just like the listing price, because they might have something to say with how your marketing remarks sound. If you are going to use AI to enhance, make sure it's not embellishing. Enhancing versus embellishing are two different things when it comes to marketing remarks. If you ever go to Battle of the Barristers or Legal Symposium, they will give you scenarios where a broker has used AI to give these beautiful marketing remarks, talks about the stream in the backyard, the bubbling brook, and there is no such thing. So make sure that whatever it puts in here is what the property is. It does reflect the property. Confidential agent remarks. This is why we're not allowed to give the detailed agent report to our clients, because we have confidential information in here. You might have a gate code, a door code. You might have information about something that's private that only an agent really needs to know. That information goes here. I highly recommend you put who you want for escrow, who you want for title. Put your escrow closer's name, email address, and telephone number. You have plenty of room to fill most of this in. I've never seen anybody not get all of this full. I get really kind of perturbed if I'm looking at the listing, I've now written an offer, we're now accepted. It's Saturday at 2 p.m. and all I have is the escrow person's name. I've got no email address, no phone number. I like to get it sent over immediately, even if it's on the weekend. The listing agent is responding to me. I Google the crap out of it. I find everything I can, still can't find it. So please put the all of escrow's name in there. The order number for title is not really that important, especially if you upload the actual title report in supplements once you receive it. And driving directions is required. The Northwest MLS says you cannot use the words use GPS. They want physical directions in there. Use either how you drove there. It can be very short, maybe find from a previous listing what the directions were. Use MapQuest to figure it out, but put the driving directions in here. And everybody signs it. Your client signed it, and you sign all of these forms. Any questions on listing input? Great. If your client is going to give you, which I highly recommend you have your client fill this out, or they give you the information, you fill it out, that's completely fine. Filling out the 22K utility information, because the buyer's going to want this, because the buyer's going to want to give this form to escrow. And in order for escrow to follow the instructions based on this form, it has to be complete. The reason they would want to give it to escrow is they want escrow to hold back money from the seller for any lienable utilities, just to make sure they're paid off before they move it. Excuse me. So I recommend you fill this out. Don't have your client sign this and leave this blank and upload it. That's not okay. If it's HOA, then put that information in here, just HOA, and that's fine. That'll get covered in their dues. And some of this stuff will be for condominiums especially, but fill it out or have your client fill it out as complete as possible. If your client doesn't want to fill it out or you don't want to fill it out, then don't have them sign it, please. I don't like the laziness that I see from some other brokerages where people have the client sign this and there's nothing else on it but their signatures and the top information. Any questions on the utility addenda or why it is used? Okay. I am not a big fan of a seller doing a pre-listing inspection. I think it opens them up for error, mainly because the buyer, we are buyer beware, buyer due diligence state. A buyer will use this as a safety net and maybe not have their own inspection, and maybe the seller's inspector didn't do a great job. We will probably hear about it a year down the road, 2 years down the road. They're going to say that we lied about something on Form 17. We hid stuff from the inspector that we used to pre-inspect the property before we listed it. I just think it is a bad practice. But if your seller's adamant about doing it, and give them the risks to let them determine if that's what they want to do. Right now, not every area is in a multiple offer situation, and your client's going to sit on the market for a while. They may have spent $700, $800, $1,000 on an inspector for a buyer to finally come along and say, nope, I want to use my own inspector. So again, it could also be a waste of money. But if your client wants to do a pre-inspection, I take that back. This is not what I'm referring to. Never mind. That is if the buyer wants to pre-inspect before they write an offer. I apologize. Form 17. Form 17 must be completed by the seller. You will notice there's check boxes even up here. Make sure one of those boxes is checked. I tell the clients, you must check one box on every single line. If you have a yes answer with an asterisk next to it, then at the bottom of the form, You need to tell the buyer why you have a yes answer. If there's not enough room here, they can do a full email printout. They can do a report or whatever the situation is. You can attach it to Form 17 and have the client sign that as well when that is delivered to the buyer or uploaded to supplement. So if there's a yes answer with an asterisk, they have to tell us why. Make sure they answer one of these boxes on every single line. They can ask you questions. More than likely, you cannot answer it. We cannot coach them. We cannot fill it out for them. And we cannot discern what their question is based on how they should answer any of these boxes. They would want to seek legal counsel if they think they don't need to disclose something, but they do. So making sure that you do not help them with this. What you can do is once it's completed, you can review it in its entirety. You see missing boxes here and there. Send it back to them. Hey, I noticed on page 1, the title section D, there's no box checked. I noticed on page 2, water, A2, there's no box checked. You can tell them that and send it back and have them check it. They can say, well, would you just check it for me? No, that's not okay. When you have them fill this out electronically, you can do that in Transaction Desk. There's an opportunity where you send it to them. You have to say that it's an editable document, that they can edit it. It will save it once they'll save it at the end. They can hang on to it for a while and they can keep checking boxes as time goes on. Once it's complete, it will come back to your transaction desk in forms, not documents, and it will come to you unsigned. So then you will add it to AuthentiSign to have them sign with either this document alone or any other documents that still need to be signed. Again, there is nothing on here that says they have to disclose there was a death in the house, that there was a sexual offenders in the neighborhood, whatever the situation is, it is the buyer to verify, okay? Any questions on Form 17? Okay. FERPTA. FERPTA, again, is something the seller has to complete. I recommend
Janine,
all sellers, yes.
I do have a question about
Sure,
Form
Sue.
17. This is Sue Kitcha. I should know this by now. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm learning so much with Keller Williams. Thank you for being such a great DB.
Oh, thanks.
As this on the buyer side of this, there are at the very last page where they sign.
Yep.
I normally just do the top line.
Yep.
I feel like that's better for the buyer,
Yes.
but oftentimes the seller will come back and want us to sign that. And I'm thinking we are receiving it because we have it and we're signing it. So what do you like to see for the buyer side there?
Number one, if it's not complete and you sign 2 or 3, your buyer's rights are gone.
Okay.
So 100% buyer signing just line 1. Yes, I don't think any seller would have any idea why they would say, because of course you're getting this information from the listing broker. So the listing broker is saying, I want your buyer to sign both lines. I doubt the seller has said to the broker, hey, make sure that any buyer that signs Form 17 or receives Form 17, that they sign lines 2 or 3 instead of just 1.
I've had many brokers encourage me highly to have them sign that. And
I'm
that's
sorry,
what
my buyer is not willing to give up their rights. They have a right of 3 days to review this once signed or once received.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome. And that's why it's very important as a listing broker that even though you might have it in supplements, that is not considered delivery. So this statement says that once it is delivered to the buyer has 3 business days to review and walk for no reason at all. It doesn't really matter, but they have 3 business days. So if you don't receive it with your offer, you then need to send it to the buyer broker firm, send it to our firm for notices because we need that as well. That will then trigger the 3 days to start. So if it's a Saturday, it's going to be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday as an example, but always send it if you don't get a signed copy with the offer as an attachment to the same email, because you want to make sure that the buyer has received it. Now, if the buyer broker calls you and says, hey, Janine, the buyer has a question on page 2 of Form 17. Now that's verbal. I can't prove that they have it, even though they've called me. So what I can do to prove that they've received it or they've been given to the buyer by the buyer broker is I can say, hey, thank you, Sue. Please send me an email with the exact questions because I want to forward that to my seller so they can answer it appropriately. I don't want to relay information in case I misconstrue something. And then now I've got written proof that the buyer has received it. Granted, I'm going to have to either go with mutual acceptance, depending on when they ask me the question, or upon that day that I now know the buyer has it and they have their 3 days start ticking in case I did not send it to them or in case I did not get a signed copy.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. FERPTA, I do want you guys to fill that out this way. It's a protection granted for the buyer because if the seller doesn't fill this out and they are a foreign person for taxation purposes, and escrow doesn't collect the money to pay the IRS, the buyer gets to pay the IRS. So buyer broker, always, always, always make sure that either this is in supplements or you've asked for it or you confirm with escrow. The purchase sale agreement gives you 10 days for the buyer to verify that escrow has received this. They don't have to give you a copy, but you can verify that they are or are not a foreign person. The escrow company can tell you that. And is escrow going to handle the process? Okay, we want to make sure our buyer doesn't get stuck with a tax bill because it's a sales tax, so it can get steep. So I do recommend you fill this out. Go ahead, Sue.
So sorry. Why is it the buyer's responsibility? To me, like the seller's agent, we fill this out when we are listing it. So I could see it being our responsibility, but I don't understand why it goes to the buyers to go and investigate whether they are a foreign person or not. That just doesn't make sense to me.
Because if they are a foreign person, they owe taxes to the IRS.
I understand they owe taxes, but I'm just saying, like you said, that the buyer, if they find out later this, they were a non-resident, then it goes to the buyer. I just don't understand why it would go to the buyer, why they wouldn't go after the person who didn't disclose it.
So the seller, probably being a foreign person, has left the country and they can't be found.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So that's why we want to make sure that it gets taken care of.
Great, thank you.
And never give advice to your client on how to fill this out. If they're like, well, I have a green card, where I say, you know what, I'm not an accountant, I'm not an attorney. You're more than welcome to call one of those entities. If you need referrals to make a phone call, happy to send those to you. But we are not going to try to help them to determine if they are a foreign person or if they're not a foreign person for taxation purposes. Okay. Okay, let's go over Form 18. Any questions on FERPTA besides that? Okay. Form 18. Form 18 is the form where you and your seller can amend your agreement or your listing input information. You can extend your listing agreement. You can change your price. A lot of people send me Form 19 and they want me to sign it as the designated broker saying the new price is X. Number one, I don't ever have to sign that. We'll go over 19 as well. And number two, Form 19, which we'll go over, is something for instructions for the Northwest MLS. So this is what you really should be using to change the price. If you want to add a co-broker, if you want to get rid of a co-broker, if you want to add limited dual agency or not. So other can be that you're changing marketing remarks. Again, it's not going to be variable information about compensation. It can change compensation if it's showing that the seller wants to pay the buyer brokerage 3%. And they're saying, no, I only want to pay 2% before you hit mutual acceptance, of course, then you can have that done here as well. Or if they want to increase it, or if they want to go from not publish to, yes, I want to publish X amount of compensation. So that's really what Form 18 is good for. Again, Form 19, which we'll take a look at, is what we call the status change input sheet for all property types. Notice here that check the box for the status change, needn't fill in the new information. You can put price change here and you can change it from 2 million to 1.9. But that means you want the MLS to make the change for you. So that is really not what you're wanting to do. You can change the price all on your own without having to have me sign it. I don't have to always sign Form 19, and you can just make that price change yourself. Make sure you have this and it's signed. Never change anything in the listing unless you have seller's written consent. So again, it doesn't say anywhere on this particular box that I have to sign it. Now you'll notice that temporarily off market, it tells you who has to sign it. Seller needs to require temporarily off market. Again, it does not say the designated broker needs to sign it. Sale fail pending. Again, this has the the requirement that I have to sign this. So you would have me sign it at the bottom and you check this information. And again, this is because you want the Northwest MLS to make changes. Number one, you do have to use temporarily off market Form 19. I cannot make it temporarily off market. Only the Northwest MLS can. So this would be a requirement of Form 19. Again, if it doesn't say DB or branch manager signature, I don't need to sign it. Again, you can make this change yourself with a Form 18. So just knowing how to really utilize this form. If you want to, this is actually a good way to use this form. If you want to cancel the listing because you're changing the price by 5% or more up or down, you will need Form 18 to make the change saying that we are making a change to our listing agreement. You're going to need a Form 19 to cancel it, which you're going to have the MLS cancel it. And you're going to put here under other that you are doing a price drop for more than 5% or whatever the situation is. And then you'll have them cancel that. And so then both of those items would be uploaded to Command as well. And then they will make the change. What is the difference between 18 and 19? 19, again, is a MLS status change form. 18 is an amendment to your listing agreement or anything that's contained in your listing input sheet. What if they write don't know on something that we can reasonably assume they should be able to answer on Form 17, I'm assuming. If you know your seller is lying, you give them back Form 17 and you tell them to make the appropriate changes because we also have a duty to disclose. So if they are lying and they refuse to make changes, you might reconsider taking them on as clients. And feel free to always call me in that situation. I can help guide you through it. Okay, I think those are most of the forms. I'm trying to think if there's anything I missed that we use commonly or uncommonly. I will tell you my process of listing a home. I like a 2-week window. I want to get a minimum of my 1A signed so that it's solidified that I have an agreement. I want to get my stager organized, photography to follow, sign installation completed. You can give them a date ahead of time. You can always cancel it or change it. That's not a problem either. Make sure you do pay attention to that because if your sign goes up and it's not active and you get caught, you will get fined by the Northwest MLS. But I like a 2-week window to get everything ready. So knowing these forms ahead of time will really help you. Knowing processes will really help you. I do a listing class where I kind of talk about the whole process of listing a home that maybe includes some of the forms or not, but it does talk about the whole process. So you'll look for that for the rest of the year for those classes to come. Sue.
Guess who? Me again. Sorry. So just recently listing some Amish home, and I was going through the seller's disclosure, and there is a warranty, home warranty in there.
Okay.
What is that a required thing by Keller Williams? It's highly suggested. And I had them sign it, but I was like, I wasn't sure.
Oh, our disclosure packets?
Yes. Sorry.
Got it. So those disclosure packets, I legally have to have that in our disclosure packets because that home warranty company will give us $3,700 towards legal fees if we get into a jam. So if they sign it, and there is more to it than just that, I'm trying to see if the legal department, our legal department, will let me take that out because I don't really care for that particular company myself. Some of the hoops we have to go through for that $3,700 that we may or may not need. Again, it's a bunch of hoops. They do not have to sign it. I know that on my form it says they have to sign it, but it's not going to hurt you if they don't sign it.
Okay. I just was curious if that was something, because I know Ben Kenny has many businesses and that was one they want us to, I just didn't know. And if so, I just need more information to
Sure.
quote unquote sell it to my clients.
Sure. No, I understand that. Don't worry about selling it to them. Just let them know that it is again, that packet is a disclosure packet. And you can let them know, listen, home warranties, this particular company Ben has a part ownership. He gets additional monies when this company is used. You don't have to sign it. I don't require that they have to sign it, and it's up to them. And there's multiple home warranty programs out there. The home warranty program also, if we do get it into a transaction, they send us like $50, like to you, they'd send you $50. And again, something you should disclose to your client if they sign it and let them know. Again, I'm not going to require you to have it signed. That's why I don't push back if it's never signed. But what she's referring to, and all of the disclosure packets are in your MLS transaction desk template section. So the icons over here on this side, if you open them up, templates is right here. It will have all disclosures in one place. And if you scroll down to documents and folders, you'll see how much is here. So there are some other good pieces in here that you might want to have. One is non-refundable earnest money addendum if you're in a multiple offer situation. Though written by an attorney, I still think it's poorly done. I still think it would get somebody into a lawsuit. Once the seller has your client's money, even if the seller can't close because of title issues, I don't know how you're gonna get that money back. I don't know many sellers that actually return the money once it's in their bank account. If you're on the listing side and your seller, you have this or a version of it, and your seller has the money, tell your seller not to do anything with it in case they have to return it. Don't let them think that it is untouchable by the buyer if the transaction doesn't close for any reason. And again, this does not address the fact that the purchase and sale agreement says the seller can only keep up to 5% of the purchase price. If you've got, earnest money that's higher than that and the seller gets all of it, buyer's not going to get anything back. So pay attention to that. Notice of seller's inspection report. If your client, this is the form I wanted, not the 35P. If your seller does a pre-listing inspection, have the buyer sign this. Okay, it's another just protection that they're in receipt of the seller's inspection report. You also have an attorney review form in here, repair form in here. So there's a few pieces in here. If you've never looked at some of these, please go take a peek. This is if the buyer is paying your compensation because the seller's not paying all of it. So these will all be in the templates, and we'll have all the disclosure packets in one area. Okay. So there's seller, there's buyer. These are going to be updated, unfortunately, come June because our agency pamphlet is changing. There's a few changes coming up to some forms based on the law where it says we cannot, come June 11th, pre-market any properties to groups. So that's where that all stems from.
And Janine, another question about forms.
Yeah.
I submitted to Command the Form 40 commission form distribution. Obviously we give it to the escrow. In my old company, they had a wiring instructions for the company. And is it Lynn who checks those? She said, "Why'd you submit this form?" And I thought,
we are not allowed to use Form 40.
Okay.
So in Command, there's a commission tab and you fill that out, and we have our own DA, and there's a note section you can put, I would like my funds wired, which I allow in any of my offices, my 3 offices. Some of my other DBs don't allow it because of bad behavior. I allow it. And the caveat behind that is you have to have all green in Command. That means that your emails and text messages are uploaded no sooner than 5 days prior to closing. The commission department will send me a copy of your DA. I will look to see what the closing date is. If it's closing in 20 days, I calendar it to check it 5 days prior to closing to make sure emails and text messages are uploaded and submitted. If I see all green, then I send instructions back to the commission department. They create a new DA for you that says that escrow is approved to wire commissions to X, Y, and Z broker or whoever's on the commission disbursement sheet. And then you have to contact escrow and you have to give them your wiring instructions. We don't have the capability at our offices.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. That is it. Is there any other questions? Well, I appreciate you all for being here. Thank you so much. This is recorded. This will be uploaded to the hub that you will always have access to unless I've used too many vulgar words, which I don't think I really did today, or if I use the luxury names of people as buyers and sellers, then YouTube will scrap my recording. So then I did not talk about septic today because all septic forms are the buyer's responsibility to put into the purchase sale agreement. So thanks, guys. Have a wonderful rest of the day. I look forward to seeing y'all soon. Cheers.